The ship called Quiet Dawn moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was a Valdorian vessel, long and silver, built by a species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years. Commander Xyrith stood at the main window and watched the distant lights of unknown worlds. The commander was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim light of the bridge. Like all Valdorians, Xyrith had 3 hearts and eyes covered by a thin silver membrane that flickered when emotions ran strong. The Valdorians were an old race. They had seen many things in their long history, but they had never seen anything quite like humans. Danny Cole was the only human on board the Quiet Dawn. He was 32 years old. Average height, with messy brown hair and a friendly smile that confused most of the crew. He came from a small town in Ohio, a place he described as flat and boring, but full of good people. The Valdorian High Council had arranged for human observers to join their exploration missions as part of a new agreement between the two species. Danny was chosen because he was an engineer and because he volunteered when no one else would. Living with 47 aliens was not easy, but Danny managed. He answered their questions with patience, even when those questions seemed strange. The Valdorians wanted to know everything about humans. They asked about food and music and family and sports and 100 other things that Danny had never thought much about. Why do humans laugh? One young officer asked him during dinner. Because things are funny, Danny said. It feels good. It is hard to explain. The Valdorians did not laugh. They showed happiness in other ways, through small movements of their hands or changes in the color of their eyes. But the loud, sudden sound of human laughter startled them every time. Danny tried to be careful. He did not want to scare his new crewmates. But some things were hard to control. Commander Xyrith took a special interest in the human. The commander visited Danny often, asking questions and taking notes on a small device. Xyrith was writing a report about human behavior for the Valdorian Academy of Sciences. Danny did not mind. He liked Xyrith. The commander was serious and formal, but there was kindness behind those silver eyes. Tell me about your family, Xyrith said one evening. Danny smiled. I have a mom and a dad back in Ohio, 2 younger sisters, a dog named Biscuit. Biscuit, Xyrith repeated slowly. This is a food item, yes? It is also a name for dogs sometimes, Danny explained. Do not ask me why. Humans are weird. Xyrith made a note. Humans are weird, the commander repeated. I am beginning to understand this. The mission was simple. The Quiet Dawn was traveling to an uncharted moon at the edge of the Orion Arm. The moon might have water, and water meant the possibility of life. The journey would take several weeks, and during that time, Danny settled into a routine. He woke early each morning, ate breakfast in the small human-sized kitchen the crew had built for him, and then worked on the ship's engines. The Valdorian technology was advanced, but not so different from what Danny knew. Machines were machines. They needed care and attention no matter who built them. The crew watched him work with fascination. Danny had a habit of whistling while he worked, a tuneless sound that he made without thinking. The Valdorians had never heard anything like it. What is that noise? Preth asked. Preth was the senior medical officer, old and wise, with silver skin that had faded to a pale gray over the centuries. Whistling, Danny said. It is something humans do when they are happy or bored or just thinking. I can stop if it bothers you. No, Preth said quickly. It is pleasant. Strange but pleasant. Danny smiled and kept whistling. The days passed quietly. Danny learned the names of the crew members and tried to remember which ones were which. The Valdorians all looked similar to his human eyes, but slowly he began to notice the differences. Some had darker eyes. Some moved more quickly. Some spoke with lower voices. Xyrith visited him every evening after dinner. They sat in Danny's small quarters and talked about nothing important. Xyrath asked about Earth. Danny asked about Valdoria. They discovered that they both liked looking at stars and that neither of them had ever been very good at making friends. "You seem lonely," Danny said one night. Xyrath's membrane flickered. "I am a commander. It is not appropriate to form close bonds with crew members." "That sounds lonely," Danny said. Xyrath was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps it is." On the 14th day of the mission, something changed. Danny began to feel tired. Not sick, just exhausted in a way that he had not felt since leaving Earth. The artificial lights on the ship were different from sunlight. The gravity was slightly wrong. His body was confused, and it was demanding rest. At dinner that evening, Danny yawned widely. It was a big yawn, the kind that made his jaw crack and his eyes water. Several Valdorians nearby jumped in surprise. "You are unwell?" Xyrath asked with concern. "Just tired," Danny said. "I am going to turn in early tonight." "Turn in?" Xyrath repeated. "Go to sleep." Danny explained. "Rest, you know?" Xyrath nodded slowly but said nothing more. The commander watched Danny leave the dining hall with a strange expression on that silver face. That night, Danny went to his quarters and prepared for bed. He brushed his teeth, changed into comfortable clothes, and lay down on the sleeping platform the crew had provided for him. It was not as soft as his bed back home, but it would do. He closed his eyes and let out a long breath. Within minutes, he was asleep. Danny did not know that Xyrath stood outside his door for a long time that night. The commander was worried. The human had seemed weak at dinner. His voice had been slower than usual. His movements had been heavy and tired. Xyrath considered entering the room to check on him, but decided against it. Humans valued privacy. Danny had explained this many times. The commander walked away, planning to check on the human first thing in the morning. The morning was many hours away, and in those hours, everything would change. The quiet dawn continued its journey through the darkness. Inside the ship, 47 Valdorians went about their evening activities. They meditated. They studied. They talked quietly with each other about the mission ahead. And in one small room, a human lay completely still, his eyes closed, his breathing slow, lost in a state that the Valdorians had not experienced in 300,000 years. Danny Cole was sleeping, but the Valdorians did not know what sleep was. And when they found him, they would think the worst. Word spread through the quiet dawn like fire through dry grass. The human was dying. The human might already be dead. No one knew exactly what had happened, but everyone knew it was serious. Crew members gathered in the corridor outside Danny's quarters. They stood in small groups, speaking in whispers, their silver faces tight with worry. Many of them had spent time with Danny over the past 2 weeks. They had eaten meals with him. They had listened to his stories. They had laughed at his jokes, even when they did not fully understand them. Now he was gone or going, and none of them knew how to feel about it. Young Officer Kira pressed close to the door, trying to see inside. She was barely 50 years old, young by Valdorian standards, and she had formed a friendship with Danny that surprised everyone, including herself. Is it true? She asked when Commander Xyrath returned from the communication center. Is he really dead? We do not know, Xyrath admitted. His body still functions, but barely. He does not respond to anything we do. It is like he has gone somewhere else and left his body behind. Kira's membrane flickered rapidly, a sign of deep distress. But I was supposed to see him tomorrow. He promised to teach me how to play cards. He said it was a human game that I would like. I know, Xyrath said gently. I'm sorry. Inside the room, Preth continued monitoring Danny's vital signs. The numbers had not changed. Heart rate remained dangerously low. Brain activity remained minimal. Breathing remained slow and shallow. The strange rumbling sounds came and went without pattern or reason. Preth had lived for over 800 years. The medical officer had seen many things in that time, diseases and injuries and deaths of all kinds. But nothing in Preth's long experience explained what was happening to Danny Cole. Should we try to wake him? One of the younger officers asked. Preth considered this carefully. We do not know what caused this state. If we try to force him awake, we might do more harm than good. Human bodies are delicate. They break easily. So we just wait? We wait, Preth confirmed. And we hope. Commander Zereth entered the room and stood beside the sleeping platform. The commander looked down at Danny's face, peaceful and still, and felt a sharp pain in all three hearts. I have sent the message to Earth, Zereth said quietly. They will receive it in approximately 4 hours. A response will take another 4 hours after that. If there is anything to be done, we will have to do it ourselves. What can we do? Preth asked. Zereth did not have an answer. The hours passed slowly. The crew took turns keeping vigil outside Danny's door. They brought small gifts and left them in the corridor, things they thought Danny might like if he woke up. Kira brought a deck of cards that Danny had given her. Another officer brought a music player loaded with human songs. A third brought a small plant from the ship's garden, something green and alive to brighten the room. They did not know if Danny would ever see these things. But they brought them anyway, because it was all they could do. Inside the room, Preth noticed something strange. Danny's body had begun to move. At first, it was just small twitches in his fingers. Then his arms shifted position, moving slowly across the platform. His head turned to one side. His legs straightened and then bent again. Commander, Preth called out. Something is happening. Zereth rushed to the platform and watched with wide eyes. Danny was moving, but not in any way that seemed purposeful. His movements were random, uncontrolled, like a puppet being jerked by invisible strings. What does this mean? Zereth demanded. I do not know, Preth admitted. Perhaps his body is fighting whatever has taken hold of him. Perhaps it is the final stage before death. I have no way to tell. Danny's mouth opened and closed several times. No words came out, just soft sounds that might have been attempts at speech or might have been nothing at all. His eyes remained closed, but the movements beneath the lids grew more active, flickering back and forth as if watching something invisible. He is dreaming, Kira said from the doorway. She had slipped into the room without anyone noticing. Dreaming? Zereth repeated. What do you mean? I read about it in the human database, Kira explained. When humans sleep, their minds create pictures and stories. They call it dreaming. The eyes move when this happens. Zereth turned back to Danny with new confusion. You mean his mind is still active? It is doing something while his body lies still? According to what I read, yes, Kira said. But I do not fully understand it. The concept is very strange to me. Preth scanned Danny's brain again with renewed interest. Neural activity is increasing, the medical officer reported. Specific regions are becoming more active while others remain quiet. This is consistent with what Kira describes. So he is not dying? Zereth asked with sudden hope. I do not know, Preth said carefully. This could be a normal part of whatever is happening to him, or it could be something else entirely. Human brains are very different from ours. I cannot interpret these readings with confidence. The crew waited and watched as Danny continued his strange dance of movement and stillness. His breathing remained slow but steady. The rumbling sounds grew quieter. His face seemed calm, almost peaceful, despite the chaos happening inside his mind. Hours passed. The artificial lights of the ship brightened slightly to simulate morning, though morning meant nothing in the endless darkness of space. The crew members who had kept vigil all night began to show signs of fatigue. Though Valdorians did not sleep, they still needed periods of rest and quiet. Zereth refused to leave Danny's side. The commander sat in a chair beside the platform and watched the human with tired eyes. So many questions filled Zareth's mind. What was happening to him? Would he wake up? What were these dreams that Kira had described? What did humans see when their minds wandered free from their bodies? The commander had no answers. Only questions and worry and a growing sense that something important was happening. Something that the Valdorians did not understand. Danny Cole lay on the sleeping platform, lost in a world of his own creation. His body twitched and shifted. His eyes moved beneath their lids. His chest rose and fell in that slow, steady rhythm that had frightened the crew so badly. And somewhere in the darkness of his sleeping mind, Danny was having the most wonderful dream about flying through clouds made of cotton candy while his dog, Biscuit, barked happily beside him. He had no idea that 47 aliens thought he was dying. He had no idea that his family would soon receive the worst news of their lives. He had no idea that his simple need for rest had caused a crisis that would change everything. Danny just slept, because that was what humans did. And he would wake up when his body was ready. The only question was whether the Valdorians would survive the wait. The ship was quiet at 03:00 hours. Most of the Valdorians were in their quarters, meditating or studying or simply sitting in peaceful silence. They did not sleep. They had not slept for hundreds of thousands of years. Their species had evolved beyond the need for unconsciousness long ago. To a Valdorian, the idea of losing awareness for hours at a time seemed dangerous and unnecessary. Commander, Zareth walked the corridors alone. This was a nightly routine, a way to clear the mind and check on the ship. The commander enjoyed these quiet hours when the lights were dim and the engines hummed softly in the background. It was peaceful. It was familiar. Zareth passed by the door to Danny's quarters and stopped. Something was wrong. The door was slightly open, just a small gap, but enough to notice. Protocol demanded all doors remain sealed during rest hours. A malfunction, perhaps, or maybe the human had forgotten to close it properly. The commander hesitated. Danny valued his privacy. He had made this clear many times. But the open door was concerning. What if something had happened? What if there was a problem with the room systems? Zareth pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. The room was dark. Emergency lighting cast a faint blue glow across the small space. Danny's belongings were scattered around in the messy way humans seemed to prefer. Clothes on the floor, books on the desk. A picture of his family stuck to the wall. And there, on the sleeping platform, lay Danny Cole. Zareth's 3 hearts began to beat faster. The human was not moving. His eyes were closed. His body was still, completely still, in a way that seemed unnatural and wrong. The commander moved closer, feet silent on the metal floor. Danny's mouth hung slightly open. His arms were spread at strange angles. His chest rose and fell on a rhythm so slow that Zareth almost missed it. Each breath was shallow, barely enough to fill his lungs. Then came the sound. It was a deep rumbling noise, rough and broken like something was stuck in Danny's throat. It came and went with his breathing, growing louder and then fading away. Zareth had never heard anything like it. The sound seemed painful, desperate, like the noise an animal might make when dying. Danny, Zareth said quietly. There was no response. The commander reached out and touched Danny's arm. The skin was warm, which seemed like a good sign, but the human did not react. No movement, no acknowledgement, nothing. Danny, Zareth said again, louder this time. Wake up? Can you hear me? Still nothing. Just a terrible rumbling sound and the slow, shallow breathing. Zareth felt something cold spread through all 3 hearts. This was wrong. This was very wrong. The human had been tired at dinner, but this was something else entirely. This looked like death, or something very close to it. The commander stepped back and touched the communication device on the wall. Medical team to human quarters immediately. Priority alert. The human appears to be in critical condition. Possibly deceased. I need assistance now. The response came within seconds. On our way. Commander Zareth turned back to Danny and knelt beside the sleeping platform. The commander did not know what to do. Human biology was still largely a mystery to the Valdorians. They had studied the species from a distance, reading reports and watching recordings, but they had never dealt with a medical emergency like this. Please, Zareth whispered. Please do not die. The door burst open and 3 Valdorians rushed in. Preth was leading them, the old medical officer moving faster than Zareth had ever seen. 2 younger officers followed with scanning equipment and emergency supplies. Report, Preth demanded. I found him like this, Zareth said. He is not responding. His breathing is very slow. He made strange sounds from his throat. I touched him, and he did not react at all. Preth moved to Danny's side and began scanning with a handheld device. The other officers took positions around the platform, their instruments humming as they gathered data. The silence stretched out for a long, terrible moment. His neural activity is minimal, one of the young officers reported. Barely detectable. The brain appears to be functioning at less than 10% capacity. Cardiovascular function is severely depressed. The other added. Heart rate is dangerously low. Blood pressure has dropped to near critical levels. Preth's silver face was grim. Respiration is weak and irregular. He's getting barely enough oxygen to sustain basic functions. What is happening to him? Zareth asked. Preth shook their heads slowly. I do not know. We have no records of this condition. It could be a disease. It could be a reaction to something on the ship. It could be that human bodies simply fail in space. We do not have enough information. Can you help him? I do not know how, Preth admitted. Human medicine is not my specialty. We could try to wake him, but I do not know if that would help or hurt. Zareth looked down at Danny's face. The human looked peaceful, almost calm, despite the terrible sounds coming from his throat. His eyes moved slightly beneath the closed lids, small twitches that seemed random and strange. What is that? Zareth pointed at the eye movements. Unknown, Preth said. Perhaps the final firing of dying neurons. Perhaps something else entirely. The commander felt a heavy weight settle in all 3 hearts. Zareth had grown fond of Danny Cole. The human was strange and confusing, but he was also kind and patient and funny in ways that Zareth had never experienced before. The thought of losing him was unbearable. We need to contact Earth, Zareth said quietly. Preth nodded. Yes, they need to know. And perhaps they can help us understand what is happening. Zareth stood and walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at Danny. The human lay still on the platform, lost in whatever darkness had claimed him. Stay with him, the commander ordered. Do not leave him alone. We will watch over him, Preth promised. Zareth walked quickly through the corridors toward the communication center. The commander's mind was racing with terrible thoughts. How would Earth react to this news? What would happen to the mission? What would Zareth say to Danny's family, the mother and father and sisters he had talked about with such love? The communication center was empty at this hour. Zareth sat down at the console and began composing the message. Each word was painful to write, heavy with grief and guilt and confusion. To Earth Command and the family of Danny Cole. It is with profound sorrow that we report an incident aboard the Valdorian vessel Quiet. Dawn, your crew member has entered a state of biological failure. His eyes are closed. His body is unresponsive to all stimulation. His vital signs have fallen to critical levels. We have attempted intervention but lack the knowledge to help him. We believe he may be dying or already deceased. We are deeply, deeply sorry. Xerath read the message 3 times before sending it. Then the commander sat alone in the dark room and waited for a response that would take hours to arrive. Back in Danny's quarters, the medical team continued their vigil. They scanned and measured and documented everything they observed. The rumbling sounds continued. The shallow breathing continued. The strange eye movements continued. And Danny Cole slept on, completely unaware of the panic and grief he was causing, lost in dreams that the Valdorians could not begin to understand. The morning came slowly on the quiet dawn. Not a real morning, of course, because there was no sun in deep space. But the ship's lights grew brighter according to a schedule designed to help the crew keep track of time. Commander Xerath had not moved from Danny's bedside all night. The commander's eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but sleep was not something Valdorians did. Rest, yes. Meditation, yes. But not sleep. Watching Danny lie motionless for hours had given Xerath time to think about many things. The commander thought about the mission and how it would continue without their human crew member. Xerath thought about the message sent to Earth and wondered how Danny's family was reacting to the terrible news. Most of all, the commander thought about all the questions that would never be answered now that Danny was gone. Preth checked Danny's vital signs every 15 minutes. The readings had not changed much through the night. Heart rate remained low. Brain activity flickered in strange patterns. The rumbling sounds had mostly stopped, replaced by quiet, steady breathing. "He is stable," Preth said during the latest check. "Whatever is happening, his body seems to have reached some kind of balance. Is that good?" Xerath asked. "I do not know," Preth admitted. "It might mean he's recovering. It might mean he has settled into a permanent state. Without more knowledge of human biology, I cannot say." Xerath nodded and turned back to watch Danny's face. The human looked so peaceful, so calm, as if nothing was wrong at all. It was hard to believe that inside that still body, something terrible was happening. And then Danny stretched. It was a small movement at first, just his arms reaching above his head. Then his back arched slightly. His mouth opened in a wide, gaping expression that showed all his teeth. A long, loud sound came from his throat, somewhere between a groan and a sigh. Xerath jumped backwards so fast that the chair fell over with a crash. Preth dropped the scanner. The 2 young medical officers pressed themselves against the wall, their eyes wide with shock. Danny's eyes opened. He blinked several times, slowly, as if the dim light was too bright for him. His arms came down and rubbed at his face. He yawned again, another one of those huge, terrifying expressions, and then sat up on the sleeping platform. Morning, he said in a rough, thick voice. "What time is it?" For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The Voldorians stared at Danny with expressions of pure disbelief. The human who had been dead, or dying, or whatever he had been, was now sitting up and asking about the time as if nothing had happened. "You were deceased." Xerath finally managed to say. Danny squinted at the commander with confusion. "What?" Xerath took a step forward, still not quite believing what was happening. "Your vital signs were minimal. You were completely unresponsive. Your eyes were closed for hours. We attempted to wake you, but nothing worked. We sent a message to your homeworld informing them of your death." Danny stared at Xerath for a very long moment. His face went through several expressions that the commander could not read. And then, suddenly, he began to laugh. It was a loud, explosive sound that made all the Valdorians flinch. Danny doubled over on the platform, his body shaking with laughter, tears forming in his eyes. He gasped for breath between fits, trying to speak but failing. "Oh man," he wheezed. "Oh no. Oh, this is bad. You thought I was dead? You exhibited all the signs of biological failure," Preth insisted, stepping forward with the scanner still clutched in one hand. Your heart rate dropped to critical levels. Your brain activity was almost non-existent. You made terrible sounds from your throat. How can you be laughing? Because I was sleeping, Danny said, wiping tears from his eyes. I was just sleeping. That is all. Humans sleep every single day. It is completely normal. The silence that followed was absolute. Xyrath looked at Preth. Preth looked at the young officers. The young officers looked at each other. None of them seemed to know what to say. Sleeping, Xyrath repeated slowly. You mean you become unconscious on purpose? Every night, Danny confirmed. About 8 hours usually. Sometimes more if I am really tired. Our brains need rest. Our bodies need time to recover from the day. We cannot function without it. But your vital signs, Preth said, still struggling to understand. They drop so low, that is normal for sleep, Danny explained. Everything slows down. Heart rate, breathing, brain activity. It helps us conserve energy while we rest. And the sounds? The terrible rumbling sounds? Danny's face turned slightly red. Oh, that was snoring. My nose gets stuffed up sometimes. It is not my proudest feature, but it is harmless. Xyrath sat down heavily on the fallen chair, legs no longer steady enough to support the commander's weight. We thought you were dying. We kept vigil all night. The entire crew has been grieving. Danny's expression changed from amusement to something softer. He looked around the room and noticed the gifts that the crew had left, the cards, the music player, the small green plant. His eyes grew moist again, but this time not from laughter. You all stayed here? Danny asked quietly. All night? We could not abandon you, Xyrath said simply. You are part of this crew. We do not leave crew members to face death alone. Danny swallowed hard. I am really sorry. I assumed you knew about human sleep. Everyone knows about sleep, right? I never thought to explain it. It did not occur to me that any species might not need it. We have not slept in over 300,000 years, Preth explained. Our species evolved beyond it long ago. The concept is entirely foreign to us. Danny shook his head slowly, still processing what had happened. So you watched me all night. You thought I was dying, and you just sat here with me. Of course, Xyrath said. What else would we do? The human was quiet for a long moment. He looked at Commander Xyrath with an expression that the Valdorian could not quite read. Something in Danny's eyes had changed, some barrier coming down that had been there before. Thank you, Danny said softly. That means more than you know. The moment was interrupted by a sudden beeping from the communication device on the wall. Xyrath stood quickly and checked the screen. It is a response from Earth, the commander reported. They received our message about your death. Danny's eyes went wide. Oh no, my parents. My sisters. They think I am dead. We must send a correction immediately. Preth said. Danny jumped off the sleeping platform and rushed toward the communication center. Still wearing his sleeping clothes, his hair sticking up in all directions. The Voldorians followed close behind. A strange procession of aliens and one very much alive human, hurrying through the corridors of the ship. They reached the communication center, and Danny sat down at the console. His hands were shaking as he opened the channel. Mom, Dad, everyone, please do not panic, he said quickly. I am fine. I am completely fine. There has been a huge misunderstanding. I was not dead. I was just sleeping. The Voldorians do not sleep, so they did not know what was happening. I am so sorry for the scare. Please respond as soon as you get this. I love you all. He sent the message and sat back with a heavy sigh. Then he looked up at Xyrath and the other Valdorians gathered around him. We need to talk, Danny said. There are a lot of things about humans that I clearly need to explain. The days that followed changed everything on the Quiet Dawn. Danny spent hours explaining human biology to the crew, answering every question they had about sleep and dreams and the strange way human bodies worked. The Valdorians listened with fascination and horror in equal measure. "You truly have no control over your minds during this time?" Xyrath asked during one of their evening conversations. "You cannot choose what you see or think." "Not really," Danny admitted. "The brain kind of does its own thing. Sometimes I dream about flying. Sometimes I dream about falling. Sometimes I dream about things that make no sense at all, like having a conversation with a talking pizza." Xyrath's membrane flickered rapidly. "This sounds terrifying. It can be," Danny said with a small smile. "We have something called nightmares, which are bad dreams that feel very real and scary. But we also have good dreams that feel wonderful. Sometimes I dream about home, about walking through the fields near my house when I was young. I wake up feeling happy, like I visited a place I love and got to bring the memory back with me." The commander considered this for a long moment. "So you experience another world while you sleep. A world created by your own mind. I guess you could say that," Danny agreed. "It is hard to explain to someone who has never experienced it." The crew of the Quiet Dawn had many such conversations over the following weeks. They asked Danny about dreams and nightmares, about sleepwalking and sleep talking, about the strange feeling of waking up from a deep sleep and not knowing where you are for a few seconds. Each answer raised more questions. The message from Earth arrived 2 days after the incident. Danny's mother was crying in the recording, her face wet with tears of relief and lingering fear. His father was trying to look stern, but kept breaking into shaky smiles. His sisters were arguing in the background about who was more worried. "You nearly gave us heart attacks," his mother said. "Do not ever do that again." "I will try," Danny replied in his response message. "But I cannot promise to stop sleeping. It is kind of necessary." The incident became famous throughout the Galactic Union. The story of the human who scared an entire alien crew by taking a nap spread from ship to ship, planet to planet. Danny received messages from beings he had never met, asking questions about sleep and marveling at the strangeness of human biology. "Your species is fascinating." One message read, "You surrender consciousness every day and simply trust that you will wake up again. This requires a kind of faith that most species cannot comprehend." Danny had never thought about it that way. To him, sleep was just something humans did. It was normal, ordinary, nothing special. But to species that never slept, it seemed like something close to magic. Commander Xyrath became particularly interested in the concept. The commander visited Danny every evening and watched as the human prepared for bed. Xyrath asked about bedtime routines, about the feeling of growing tired, about the moment when consciousness finally slipped away. "What is it like?" Xyrath asked one night. "The moment before sleep takes you. What do you feel?" Danny thought about it carefully. "It is hard to describe. Everything gets heavy. My thoughts slow down. The world kind of fades away at the edges. And then there is nothing, just darkness, until I wake up again." "You are not afraid?" "Of what?" "Of not waking up," Xyrath said quietly. "Of the darkness being permanent." Danny smiled softly. "I guess I never really thought about it. Humans have been sleeping since the beginning of our species. We trust that our bodies know what they are doing. We trust that we will return from wherever sleep takes us." "Trust," Xyrath repeated. "You trust your body to keep you alive while your mind is gone." "I suppose so. Yes." The commander was silent for a long moment. Then, very quietly, Xyrath said something that surprised Danny deeply. "I think humans are braver than we realized. Because we sleep?" Danny asked. "Because you surrender control," Xyrath explained. "Every night, you give up everything that makes you who you are. You enter a state of complete helplessness and vulnerability. You cannot protect yourself. You cannot think or plan or react to danger. And yet you do this willingly, trustingly, without fear. That requires courage that my species has never needed to develop. Danny did not know what to say. He had never considered sleep to be brave. It was just something that happened, something necessary, something completely ordinary. But hearing Xyrith describe it this way made him see it differently. The mission continued. The quiet dawn reached the uncharted moon and found water beneath the surface, enough to support a small colony if the Union decided to establish one. The discovery was important, but somehow it seemed less significant than what had happened with Danny. When the ship finally returned to Earth, Xyrith accompanied Danny to the surface. They stood together in the warm sunlight of a Kansas afternoon, watching humans go about their daily lives. Children ran and played. Adults worked and talked. Everywhere, there were signs of a species that had no idea how strange they appeared to the rest of the galaxy. Look at them all, Xyrith said quietly. Every single one of them will close their eyes tonight. They will surrender their consciousness. They will experience that small death that you described. And tomorrow, they will wake up and do it all again, thinking nothing of it. That is just how humans are, Danny said with a shrug. Xyrith turned to look at the human who had become such a dear friend. Your species is remarkable, Danny Cole, not because you build mighty ships or conquer distant worlds, but because you face the void inside your own minds every night and choose to return from it. You die a little death each evening and are reborn each morning. This is something my people have forgotten. Something we lost when we evolved beyond sleep. Danny smiled. Does this mean you will finally stop checking on me at 3 in the morning? Absolutely not, Xyrith replied seriously. Someone must keep watch over the dead who refuse to stay dead, and so they did. Across missions and years and the vast distances of space, Danny and Xyrith remained friends. The commander never quite got over the habit of checking on Danny during the night. Standing quietly in the doorway and watching the humans sleep, it was not worry anymore. It was something closer to wonder. The Valdorians began studying human sleep in earnest. They wrote papers and created art, inspired by the concept of dreams. Some of them even tried to imagine what it might feel like to let go of consciousness, to trust completely in the continued function of their bodies. They never could quite understand it. Sleep remained a mystery to them, a beautiful and terrifying thing that only humans and a few other species experienced. But they came to respect it, even admire it, as one of the many strange gifts that evolution had given to the universe. And Danny Cole, the engineer from Ohio, who had accidentally convinced an entire alien crew that he was dying, never slept quite the same way again. Each night, as he closed his eyes and felt consciousness fade away, he thought about Xyrith and the other Valdorians keeping watch. He thought about their concern, their grief, their relief when he woke up. He thought about how something as ordinary as sleep could seem like a miracle to beings who had never experienced it. And in that moment before darkness took him, Danny felt grateful. Grateful for sleep. Grateful for dreams. Grateful for the small death that came each night and the rebirth that followed each morning. Most of all, he was grateful for the friends who had taught him to see the magic in ordinary things. The story became legend throughout the Galactic Union, a tale told and retold about the human who was not quite dead and the aliens, who learned that sometimes the strangest miracles are the ones we never notice. And every night, across 1,000 worlds, beings looked up at the stars and wondered what it might feel like to close their eyes, let go, and trust in the morning to come.